Marcus thought it was just another late shift, until his manager pulled him aside and accused him of stealing cash he never touched. In front of everyone they emptied his pockets, humiliated him, and called security. But when the cameras were checked, what they found didn't just clear Marcus. It exposed something far darker. So why did the company try to bury the footage? Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The sun was just beginning to filter through the bay windows of the Harper residence, throwing long golden lines across the oakwood floors. Dr. Evelyn Harper, tenured professor of mathematics at Wellesley College, walked barefoot through her quiet colonial-style home in Newton, Massachusetts. She carried a half-full mug of black coffee in one hand, and a thick stack of midterm essays in the other. It was her ritual: silence, coffee and grading before the chaos of academic bureaucracy took over. She didn't expect anyone to be in her study this early. Rosa usually arrived around 8 a.m. to clean, and her son Malik always waited quietly in the kitchen or the back hallway, never speaking unless spoken to. Evelyn had only exchanged a handful of words with the boy since Rosa started bringing him on her cleaning days 3 months ago. He was tall for his age, lanky, polite, and always had a book in his hand, but that was all she knew. As she approached the study, Evelyn paused. The door, which she always left slightly ajar, was fully open. She heard the faint squeak of a marker gliding across her whiteboard. She pushed the door wider. There, standing in front of her 6-foot whiteboard, was Malik. He didn't see her. His back was to the door, hoodie sleeves pushed up, his right hand moving with furious precision. The board was nearly full, not with scribbles or high school math problems, but with complex integrals, partial differential equations, and matrix transformation. Evelyn blinked. Twice. This wasn't mimicry. This was comprehension. Malik paused, stepped back, and studied the problem he had nearly solved. His lips moved slightly, as if he were talking to himself. Then he reached for another marker, switching from black to red, correcting an error in his second line. Evelyn stepped into the room. Malik, he jumped, the red marker falling from his hand and clattering against the hardwood. His eyes widened, filled with fear. Not embarrassment, not guilt. Fear. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't touch anything. I saw the equation, and I thought, I just wanted to see if I could figure it out. I'll erase it. Evelyn walked slowly toward the board, eyes scanning the equations. Her heart thudded. This wasn't some simple formula from a textbook. It was the same problem she'd assigned to her graduate students last week. A notoriously difficult application of Green's theorem. Most had failed to even attempt. Malik hadn't just attempted it. He was within one step of solving it. Where did you learn this? She asked, her voice low. Malik didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes down. My mom cleans at the high school sometimes. They throw out textbooks at the end of the year. I take the ones no one wants. Evelyn blinked. And you taught yourself vector calculus? He nodded, eyes still fixed on the ground. It's just numbers. Once you get the rules, they kind of talk to each other. She stared at him. There was no bravado in his voice, no arrogance, just quiet certainty, and a strange, haunting sadness. Rosa's voice came from the hallway. Malik? Everything okay? Malik stepped back quickly, as if caught stealing. Ellen looked at the boy again, then at the board. Yes, Rosa, everything's fine. Can I speak with Malik for a moment? Rosa hesitated. Evelyn could sense her hesitation, maybe even distrust, but she replied, okay. Ellen turned back. You know this isn't normal, right? Malik shrugged. It doesn't feel weird to me. It's the only time I feel like I can breathe. That line hit her. Something about the way he said it, like he lived holding his breath. She thought of the way Rosa never made eye contact when talking to her. The way Malik stayed in the background, hidden, silent, as if the very walls might swallow them, if they made too much noise. She took a step closer. Would you like to work through the rest of this with me? Malik's head shot up. For the first time, he looked her in the eyes. You mean, like help you solve it? No, she said softly. Like we solve it together. As colleagues. That word changed everything. Colleague. His face lit up for a moment, brief, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But then it closed down again, guarded. I can't. I shouldn't have been in here. My mom needs this job. If they find out I was messing around in your study. You weren't messing around, she interrupted. You were doing real work. Work that most of my students can't even touch. He didn't respond, just stared at the floor again. Evelyn felt something rising in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Awe. And a protective anger. This boy had taught himself advanced mathematics from discarded textbooks, and the only thing he feared was being noticed. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. The equations on the whiteboard haunted her. But more than that, Malik's voice lingered in her ears. It's the only time I feel like I can breathe. She thought about the private school down the road where her colleagues sent their children. She thought about Malik's worn hoodie, his too big sneakers, and how quickly he recoiled from praise. The next morning, Evelyn made a decision. She printed out an extra syllabus from her graduate seminar, Advanced Applications of Multivariable Calculus. She wrote Malik in the top corner. But when she offered it to him that afternoon, he stared at it like it was poison. I can't, he said again. Please don't. Why not? People don't like kids like me, sitting in rooms like that. Evelyn frowned. What do you mean? He didn't answer. That weekend she reviewed attendance protocols, visitor passes, insurance policies. She found a loophole that allowed for non-enrolled academic observers with professor sponsorship. She filed the paperwork. By Monday, Malik was quietly sitting in the back of her 10:30 a.m. lecture. No one noticed. At first, but academia has eyes everywhere. By Thursday, Evelyn received an anonymous note in her faculty mailbox. We don't let the help audit classes. What are you doing? Why would a janitor's son know advanced calculus better than her grad students? Malik James didn't belong in rooms lined with leather-bound books and glass cabinets. At least, not according to the world around him. At 15, he had mastered the art of shrinking into corners, of holding his breath just enough to be invisible. It wasn't timidity, it was survival. Where he came from, standing out too brightly meant becoming a target. Born and raised in Mattapan, a working-class neighborhood south of Boston, Malik had learned early what silence could protect you from. His mother, Rosa, raised him on her own after his father was deported when Malik was just 6. Since then, life had been a pattern of whispered worry, night shifts, and secondhand everything. Rosa worked hard, brutally hard, cleaning houses, scrubbing bathrooms, folding laundry for people who never remembered her name. The Harpers were different in one way. Evelyn paid on time and treated Rosa with formal politeness, but the same unspoken rule applied. No one looked too closely at the people cleaning behind the scenes. Malik never blamed his mother. He admired her. But he learned, year by year, how little people expected from boys who looked like him. Dark skin, quiet eyes, no silver spoons, not the stuff of Ivy League dreams. Teachers often overlooked him, assuming he was slow, distracted, or disinterested. He never corrected them. Why bother? Every time he raised his hand with the right answer, the eyes would come. Surprise, skepticism, the unspoken question, did you cheat? So he stopped raising his hand. Instead, he devoured discarded textbooks. He taught himself algebra from a torn-up SAT prep guide he found on a bus seat. By 13, he was experimenting with complex numbers. By 14, multivariable functions. He worked through equations by flashlight when the power was out. His notebooks were filled with dreams disguised as problems. When Rosa started bringing him to Evelyn Harper's house during cleaning shifts, he saw the professor's study like a forbidden temple, so full of books, journals, diagrams. Equations danced across the whiteboard, taunting him like puzzles waiting to be cracked. At first, he only peeked through the crack in the door. Then curiosity overtook fear. And now he'd been caught. That moment with Evelyn, when she saw his work, had stirred something dangerous. Hope. But hope, for someone like Malik, was slippery. It often came wrapped in consequences. Rosa scolded him in the car that night. Not harshly, but with worry. They don't want us in their spaces, Malik. Not unless we're cleaning them. You can't give them a reason to send us away. Malik understood. He always did. But something in him had shifted. The next day, Evelyn handed him a syllabus. It shook him. No one had ever offered him something like that without asking for something in return. Not a favor. Not a sacrifice. Not a performance. Still, when Evelyn explained he could quietly observe her graduate course, no credit, just learning, Malik hesitated. It wasn't fear of the math. It was fear of the room. Fear of being seen. Because when a poor black kid steps into a prestigious academic space, he isn't seen as a student. He's seen as a statement, and statements make people uncomfortable. On Monday, Malik entered Wellesley College for the first time. He wore his cleanest jeans, a plain navy hoodie, and shoes that squeaked slightly when he walked. Evelyn met him at the side entrance. She said nothing, only gave him a slight nod, and led him to a seat in the back row. The classroom was filled with students in Patagonia fleeces and monogrammed water bottles. A few glanced at him, not long enough to be called stares, just long enough to register what didn't fit. Malik focused on the equations. It was the only place he didn't feel judged. By Thursday, the note arrived in Evelyn's mailbox. It wasn't signed, just a slip of paper with typed words. "We don't let the help audit classes. What are you doing?" Evelyn didn't show it to Malik, but she didn't throw it away either. That same afternoon, she asked him if he'd consider applying to the Young Scholars program at MIT. Malik flinched. Not physically, but something in him recoiled. His voice dropped. "Please don't do that. Don't try to save me." Evelyn blinked. "I'm not trying to save you. I want to help." Same thing. In their eyes, I'll always be the kid who got lifted, not the kid who earned it. She didn't know how to respond. When the professor offers help, Malik flinches like it's a threat. Why? At first, Malik's presence in Evelyn Harper's graduate class was a quiet ripple in still water. He sat in the back, took notes without raising his hand, and disappeared the moment the lecture ended. But even silence, when unexpected, has a weight. But the second week, whispers began. Small ones. Muted. But unmistakable. "Isn't that the cleaning lady's son? What's he doing in here? Is this some kind of charity experiment?" In an elite college classroom filled with future scholars, researchers, and tenure-track dreams, Malik was a disruption simply by existing. Evelyn noticed it, the sudden pauses when conversation started and stopped near her office, the glances exchanged between faculty when she walked into meetings. But she also noticed something more subtle. Her students were adjusting, not outwardly. No one dared say anything directly to her, but she saw it in how they sat, how they avoided the row Malik quietly claimed as his own. Excellence, it seemed, had a color scheme. The irony was bitter. Here was a boy solving equations they hadn't even attempted, and the response wasn't wonder. It was suspicion. Malik never mentioned it. He walked through those halls like a ghost, never making eye contact, never sitting too close, always scanning for the next exit. But Evelyn could see it in his shoulders, the way they hunched more each day, like he was bracing for impact. She wanted to shield him, but she couldn't protect someone from being seen. That was the problem. He was being seen now. By the third week, the math department chair, Dr. Ronald Hayworth, scheduled a meeting with Evelyn. He closed the door slowly, too slowly, and sat down across from her without smiling. "Evelyn," he began, folding his hands on the table, "we've received some concerns." About? About protocol. About integrity. About optics. That last word landed with a thud. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "You're referring to Malik." Hayworth didn't answer directly. Instead, he sighed. "He's not a registered student. I filed the observer paperwork myself. It's within policy. That policy wasn't designed for situations like this." She narrowed her eyes. "Like what?" He held her gaze a second too long. The silence between them said everything. "Evelyn," he said, lowering his voice, "you have to understand how this looks. We're a nationally ranked department. We're cultivating future PhDs, Rhodes Scholars. When a non-enrolled, underaged individual sits in, especially one with no formal transcript, he's not a threat to your rankings, Ronald. He's just a kid who's smarter than most of your graduate students." That silence again. "It's not about intelligence," Hayworth said carefully. "It's about fit." There it was, that word. Fit. The velvet glove over the iron fist of academic exclusion. Evelyn stood. If anyone else had shown that level of brilliance, they'd be on a full scholarship by now. But because he's the son of a maid, and because he doesn't fit your brochure, you want him invisible. Hayworth's expression didn't change. "I'm advising you to reconsider your position. For your own sake." She left the office shaking. The following Monday, Malik didn't show up to class. Evelyn looked toward the back row once, twice. Nothing. She checked her phone during office hours. No messages. Rosa hadn't called either. The day passed like a slow spiral. That evening, she drove past Rosa's apartment in Mattapan. She didn't knock, just sat in her car, waiting. 30 minutes later, Malik emerged from the building. Hoodie up, backpack slung low. She called out his name. He froze, then approached her window cautiously. "Why weren't you in class today?" she asked gently. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at her. "Someone followed me after school last week. Said I didn't belong on campus. Said people were watching." Eleanor felt her blood go cold. "Who?" "I don't know. A guy, maybe a student, maybe not. Didn't say much, just looked angry." She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "You're not in trouble, Malik. You have every right to be there." He gave her a long look, one she couldn't quite read.
That's not how it works, Dr. Harper.
"Then how does it work? You get one shot to be quiet, or they'll take everything, even if you didn't ask for it." That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. Again, she paced her study, thinking about Malik's words. His fear wasn't irrational, it was learned, etched into him through years of being too smart in the wrong skin. The next day, she made a decision. She stood at the start of class and introduced Malik formally, explained his presence, his brilliance, his right to learn. She named him not as a guest, but as a peer. Some students clapped, most didn't. Later in the hallway, a tenured colleague stopped her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Brave move this morning." She didn't answer. The same afternoon, while clearing her inbox, Evelyn saw a forwarded message, no subject line. Just an attachment. An email chain. The most recent line chilled her. "We cannot allow non-students to use this classroom as a political stage. I've drafted a formal complaint to the dean, submitted just now. The sender, Dr. Ronald Hayworth." She stared at it, pulse quickening. This wasn't about policy anymore. It was about preservation, of image, of elitism, of the fragile illusion that genius only wears certain clothes. Malik had broken that illusion, and now the machine was moving. One email to the dean could end everything, and someone just sent it. Dr. Evelyn Harper sat in her office, eyes locked on the forwarded email from Ronald Hayworth. She read it again, slowly this time. Every sentence was wrapped in bureaucratic neutrality, but underneath it pulsed the same old message: protect the gates, keep them closed. Allowing an unregistered individual to sit in on graduate-level instruction without departmental approval sets a dangerous precedent, risks institutional integrity, blurs academic standards. The language was sterile, but Evelyn had read enough research papers on systemic racism to recognize the tactic. Hide bias behind concern. Mask fear behind protocol. She closed the email and opened her browser. It was time for numbers. Her fingers moved fast, pulling up internal admissions data from the college archives. She searched by department, by race, by year. Wellesley's math department had a long, proud history, and a consistent record of admitting top-tier students. But as the spreadsheet expanded across her screen, Evelyn's breath caught. In the last 10 years, the department had admitted only 3 black students to its graduate program, out of over 200. And of those 3, none had completed a thesis under faculty advisement. 1 transferred, the other 2 simply vanished from records after year 1. Evelyn stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a silent accusation. This wasn't underperformance. This was design. There were no hostile signs posted, no laws explicitly broken, just a quiet current pulling certain students under, while others were carried effortlessly to shore. And Malik, unregistered, unconnected, uninvited, was now pushing against that current, alone. She began writing, not a complaint, but a report. She titled it Patterns of Exclusion, a Decade of Racial Disparity in STEM Admissions at Wellesley College. She included data, quotes from anonymous student exit surveys, even archived emails from faculty discussing cultural fit. By midnight, the document was 32 pages long. She didn't publish it. Not yet. She saved it, encrypted it, and attached a note to her private folder, release only if they try to erase him. The next day, Evelyn walked into class to find Malik already seated, earlier than usual. He didn't look up, just stared at his notebook, eyes focused but distant. "You okay?" she asked quietly, as she passed by. He nodded, but his posture said otherwise. Tighter. Withdrawn. After class, she caught up with him near the courtyard. "I know about the email," she said. Malik's eyes narrowed. "Is it over?" "Not if I have anything to say about it." He sighed. "That's what I'm afraid of." Evelyn hesitated.
Why?
"Because when people like you speak up for people like me, they stop listening to you too." It wasn't bitter. It was matter of fact. Like he'd seen it before. That afternoon, Evelyn was called into an emergency faculty meeting. The dean sat at the head of the long oak table, flanked by 3 associate chairs. Ronald Hayworth was already seated. He didn't look at her. We're here to discuss some concerns raised about non-traditional observers in academic spaces, the dean began. Ellen enfolded her arms. You mean Malik? Let's avoid names, the dean said, glancing at her with rehearsed diplomacy. Hayworth spoke next. It's about boundaries. We can't allow our campus to become an open-access resource for the public, especially when there's no formal vetting, no GPA, no transcripts. Ellen cut in. No pedigree, you mean? A few heads turned. The room tightened. I'm not saying he's not smart, Hayworth replied. Too quickly. I'm saying we have to protect the academic integrity of our institution. By excluding the most brilliant student we've seen in years?
That landed hard.
The room went silent. The dean interjected calmly. Dr. Harper, the optics of this are complicated. You've made a personal choice that now reflects on the department. Ellen smiled coldly. Good. Then maybe the department needs to look at itself. She returned to her office, exhausted. Her phone buzzed, a message from Rosa.
Malik didn't come home yet.
Said he stayed behind to study.
Should I be worried?
Evelyn's stomach turned. She grabbed her coat and headed straight for campus. She found Malik in the lower library annex, tucked in a corner with a linear algebra text spread wide. He looked up, startled. I'm fine, he said immediately. Just needed quiet. You scared your mom. He looked down. Sorry. Ellen sat beside him. I know you feel like the world is watching, but you don't have to carry all this alone. He didn't answer. A long silence. Then, softly, it's not just the looks, Dr. Harper. It's the air. The air? Like I'm breathing something that wasn't made for me. Like even oxygen has rules here. The next morning, students arrived on campus to find something new. A crude, handwritten message taped to a locker just outside the engineering wing. Malik's locker. The note read, Know your place. All caps. Thick black marker. Uneven letters. No signature. No cameras in that hallway. Evelyn arrived just after campus security. She stared at the note, heart pounding. The word place echoed like a siren. Malik stood nearby, not saying a word. The dean arrived minutes later. He looked at the note, shook his head, then turned to Evelyn. Let's not escalate this. We'll open an investigation. In the meantime, let's be careful not to invite more attention. She blinked. More attention. A hate message was taped to a child's locker. And your concern is publicity? It's sensitive, he said. We don't want this to become political. Malik walked away without a word. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just kept walking. Back hunched. Steps slow. An anonymous message appears on Malik's locker. Know your place. The morning after the note appeared on Malik's locker, Rosa called Evelyn. Her voice was quiet, but not fragile. It had an edge Evelyn hadn't heard before. I need to talk to you, she said. Today, in person. They met in the church basement, where Rosa volunteered twice a week. It smelled of old hymnals and pine cleaner. Rosa wiped her hands on her apron and led Evelyn to a back bench near the supply closet. This isn't about work, Rosa began, sitting down. It's about Malik. Evelyn nodded. I know. The note. Rosa cut her off. It's not just the note. It's everything. You're pulling him into something dangerous. He's already in it, Rosa. He was born in it. Rosa looked away. I've spent 15 years teaching him one thing: how to stay invisible. That's how you survive in this country, when you're black and poor and don't belong anywhere. He does belong. Not in your world. The words weren't cruel. They were resigned, worn, like Rosa had rehearsed them for years, waiting for a moment like this. She looked Evelyn in the eye. You see him now, but you'll go home tonight to your quiet house and your books, and the danger will stay with him. Evelyn didn't answer. Because Rosa was right. Malik had always known the best places to hide. When he was 9, his mother got a job cleaning the local community center. While she mopped hallways, he'd sneak into the storage closet near the staff lounge. The janitor there, an old man named Clyde, took pity on him and let him stay as long as he didn't make noise. That's where he found his first discarded algebra book. The cover was torn, the first 30 pages missing, and half the problems were scribbled over with permanent marker. But Malik didn't care. It was the first time math didn't feel like punishment. It felt like secrets, secrets he could unlock without permission. He read that book, cover to cover. Then another, and another. At night, when the electricity got cut off again, he'd solve problems under the hallway's emergency light, using pencil stubs and crumpled sheets from old takeout bags. He never showed anyone, not even Rosa, because she was always tired, always worried. Her one rule was simple and constant: don't give them a reason to look at you. So Malik made himself small, quiet, invisible, until Evelyn, until her classroom, until the moment she saw him, not as a favor, not as a mistake, but as someone who belonged. But being seen brought its own kind of violence. The locker note was only the beginning. He noticed how classmates shifted their chairs subtly away from him, how no one partnered with him on problem sets. He overheard a girl whisper to another, "He's just here for optics. Watch, she'll use him for a diversity grant or something." Even when he got the answers right, especially when he got the answers right, the room got colder. Eleanor tried to protect him, but institutions don't change with good intentions. They protect themselves. One afternoon, Evelyn returned from a curriculum committee meeting to find a yellow envelope sitting on her office desk. No return address, just her name, typed. Inside, a folded letter and a printed contract. The letter was blunt. "It's in everyone's best interest if this situation dissolves quietly. The boy has talent, no one disputes that. But his presence creates tension, discomfort. We're prepared to offer a modest scholarship to his family, $7,500 in exchange for his withdrawal from all future lectures." Evelyn felt her stomach turn. She scanned the document. It was written like a settlement, not an academic offer, not an opportunity, a payoff. No signature, just a generic post office box in Cambridge. She sat back in her chair, stunned. They weren't trying to help Malik. They were trying to buy his absence. That night, Evelyn couldn't hold it in. She drove to Rosa's apartment again, gripping the envelope the entire ride. She knocked twice. Rosa opened the door, already looking tired. Evelyn held up the envelope. "Have you seen this?" Rosa frowned. "No." Malik stood behind her, holding a bowl of reheated noodles. He looked between them. "What is it?" Ellen handed him the letter. He read it once, silently. Then again. Then handed it back. "They want me gone." Ellen shook her head. "They're scared of you. That's different." Malik smiled bitterly. "Scared of a janitor's kid with a library card. They're scared because you don't need their permission to be brilliant." Malik looked at his mom. She hadn't said a word. "What do you think?" he asked her softly. Rosa hesitated. I don't want to see you broken." He nodded. "Then, maybe I need to break them first." Evelyn's breath caught. That wasn't anger in his voice. It was purpose. The next morning, Malik walked into class early and took the front seat, dead center. It was a message, and the room felt it. The professor finds out Malik has been offered money to stop attending her lectures. The next week brought rejection letters. Evelyn had reached out to 4 of the top universities, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and Princeton, each boasting about their support for diverse, underserved talent. She included Malik's work, a recommendation that read like prophecy, and a plea for consideration outside the usual framework. The responses were swift and nearly identical. "We're unable to proceed due to a lack of formal academic records. No standardized testing history. Non-traditional background, does not meet institutional criteria." Not one acknowledged the content of his work. MIT's was the shortest. "We require a minimum of 2 years of accredited instruction for consideration. We wish Malik the best." They weren't rejecting his math. They were rejecting him. Because Malik didn't enter through their doors. He cracked the foundation. He wasn't part of the pipeline. He was proof that talent doesn't need permission, and institutions are built on permission. Malik read the emails in silence. Ellen watched him, hoping for outrage, but all she saw was a quiet nod. "It's fine," he said. "No, it's not fine." He met her eyes for a moment, then looked away. "They weren't gonna let me in anyway. Not someone like me. I've seen how this works." The worst part wasn't the rejection. It was how prepared he already was for it. That night, Evelyn pulled out one of Malik's older notebooks. Inside was something she hadn't truly noticed the first time. A detailed sketch of an approach to the Riemann hypothesis. A math problem so legendary, it had a $1 million bounty for a solution. Malik had no idea what the bounty was. He was just obsessed with the puzzle. She reviewed his work again, this time more slowly. It was incomplete, of course. But it was close, closer than she'd seen in her 20 years of research. His logic was layered, intuitive and unorthodox in ways that didn't follow standard instruction, because he'd never had standard instruction. Evelyn sat there until 3 a.m., heart pounding, and then she did something bold. She scanned the proof and posted it anonymously to a top-tier mathematics forum used by Ivy League researchers, doctoral students, and peer reviewers. Her caption was simple: unorthodox Riemann-proof approach from independent learner. Thoughts? She used the alias, unknown mind. By morning, the thread had over 8,000 views. By noon, mathematicians from across the country were analyzing it. Some were confused, others curious, a few stunned. Who is this? I've never seen this approach before. It's raw, but this is real thinking. YouTube math influencers began covering it. Reddit threads popped up titled, "Did a teenager just crack the Riemann?" By evening, Evelyn's inbox was overflowing: interview requests, collaboration inquiries, academic institutions wanting to speak to unknown mind. One email stood out. It was from the Annals of Mathematics, the most prestigious journal in the field. "If this submission is authentic, we'd like to initiate a peer review. Please verify the author's identity." She called Malik that night. "You're going viral." "For what?" "The Riemann sketch. I posted it. Under a fake name." Silence. "You mad?" "No. Just surprised. I didn't think anyone would care." "They care." "Yeah, but they don't know who I am yet." "Do you want them to?" "Only if it doesn't change the way they see the work." But that moment was gone. Because the very next day, a graduate student, likely jealous, maybe even malicious, exposed him in a tweet. "The math genius solving the Riemann is 15. His mom cleans our buildings. Let that sink in." It hit 1 million views in hours. Suddenly Malik wasn't just a mind. He was a story. With the story came attention and hate. "There's no way this is real. Affirmative action stunt. This kid probably plagiarized it from someone in the department." Ellen watched Malik retreat into himself. He didn't want to go outside. He stopped showing up to class. He turned his phone off. Evelyn went to check on him. He didn't open the door. "I didn't ask for this," he said from behind it. "I know. I just wanted to learn, not be their poster boy." Evelyn leaks Malik's solution to a famous unsolved equation, and the internet erupts. Malik James had never wanted to be known. Not by professors, not by media, not by strangers with microphones and agendas. For most of his life, being unseen was the only thing that kept him safe. Now he was the name on everyone's lips, and it felt like drowning with no surface in sight. What started as a quiet post on an obscure math forum had snowballed into a media frenzy. Headlines clashed with each other in a twisted tug-of-war. Teen janitor's son stuns Ivy League with groundbreaking proof. From broom closet to blackboard, the black genius America ignored. Merit or myth? The math world divided over anonymous prodigy. At first Malik didn't believe it. He thought Evelyn was exaggerating when she said the internet had erupted. But then came the messages. Dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. People trying to reach him. Interviewers. Talent scouts. Journalists. Recruiters. Trolls. They found his name. His neighborhood. His mother. By the end of the first week, someone had posted the address of his building on a Twitter thread, claiming he was a hoax. 2 men parked outside for 3 hours in a black SUV. Just watching. Ellen was the one Rosa called. Her voice shook, not from panic but exhaustion. "They're sitting outside, Evelyn. Just watching. Taking pictures. Of our home. I'll come now." "No, you won't," Rosa snapped. "You'll just make it worse." "Rosa, you said you wanted to help. Help means fixing this, not making him a target." Ellen hung up, grabbed her coat, and drove anyway. She found Malik curled on the couch, hoodie drawn low over his face. TV off. Lights dimmed. He wasn't speaking. Rosa sat at the kitchen table staring at the door, hands folded like in prayer, but her eyes weren't closed. "I should have pulled him out the second you looked at him, like he was more than a kid," she whispered. Ellen stepped closer. "He is more than a kid. But he's still a kid." By week 2, Malik James was trending. But the narrative had shifted. What started as wonder, the marvel of a self-taught genius, was now suspicion, jealousy, contempt. Reddit threads exploded with accusations.
This was clearly ghostwritten.
Some white professor used this poor black kid as a stunt. He probably memorized someone else's work. Fox News aired a panel discussion titled Woke Math. when diversity goes too far. The host opened with a question that made Evelyn's blood boil. Is this the future of academia? Lowering the bar to make janitors feel like geniuses? Even liberal outlets weren't kind. Some questioned Evelyn's motivations. Others dug into Malik's past, or lack thereof. There were no academic transcripts, no standardized tests, no proof that he had ever formally been educated. Only journals, notebooks and whiteboards filled with numbers no one believed he could have reached alone. Malik stopped going to class. He stopped eating regular meals. He silenced his phone and unplugged the apartment's internet router. When Evelyn knocked on their door a few days later, Rosa answered with red eyes and a raw voice. He's in his room, but he's not in there, if you understand me. Ellen nodded. She did. She stood in the hallway for a long moment before knocking on his door. Malik? It's me. Silence. You don't have to open the door. I just want you to know I'm still here. A pause. Then through the wood, soft and flat. They don't hate the math. They hate that I did it. They don't get to take this away from you. They already did. That same day, Evelyn received a manila envelope in her campus mailbox. No return address. Inside, printed photos of her home, her car, her walking with Malik on campus. Scrawled in thick Sharpie across one of the photos, "We see what you're doing." She took the envelope straight to campus security. The officer on duty scanned the contents and shrugged. Could be kids. Could be nothing. Or it could be a threat. No crime was committed, Dr. Harper. Unless they step on your property or physically threaten you, our hands are tied. She left the office with shaking hands and a new realization. The institution she worked for had no interest in protecting her or Malik. That night, Evelyn received a voicemail from the dean. Evelyn, we need to discuss the growing unrest around your observer student. The administration is concerned about the attention this is bringing. Let's talk soon. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He didn't say, are you safe? He said, unrest. As if Malik was a riot. Rosa called again the next morning. This time she was crying. He hasn't come out of his room in 12 hours. He won't eat. He won't speak to me. Evelyn, I'm losing him. Evelyn drove over, heart pounding. She sat outside his door again. You're not a symbol, Malik. You're not a statement. You're you. And that's enough. That's more than enough. No response. Only the sound of soft, measured breathing on the other side. The media firestorm grew more frenzied. An online petition calling for Malik to be properly evaluated reached 50,000 signatures. A viral TikTok claimed Malik was actually a 22-year-old Nigerian graduate, pretending to be a teen genius for a visa scam. An anonymous blog accused Evelyn of child exploitation. Every lie buried the truth deeper. On the morning of the third week, Evelyn arrived on campus just after sunrise. She hadn't been sleeping. She climbed the steps to her office, turned down the corridor, and stopped cold. It was carved into the wood of her door. Deep, violent, raw, a swastika.
Not painted. Carved.
The gouges in the wood were still fresh, like someone had done it hours before. The grooves were jagged, and there was no signature, no note, just that ancient, unmistakable symbol of hate, burned into her space. For a moment she stood still, not in shock, but calculation. Because now it wasn't just Malik under attack. It was her too, and maybe that's when something hardened in her. Not fear.
Resolve.
She walked into her office, sat down, and opened her laptop. She didn't call security. She didn't file a report. She uploaded a document titled Erased Before Entry, a decade of racial bias in elite math programs. It contained every admission stat she'd gathered, every recorded dropout of black students, every faculty hiring decision, peer-reviewed citation gap, and coded language used to deny opportunity. She attached a picture of the carved door. She hit send to every major publication that had covered Malik's story. Then she closed her laptop and whispered to the silence. Let's see if they're still watching. Evelyn finds a swastika carved into her office door. The photo of the swastika spread faster than Evelyn expected. She hadn't meant for it to go viral. But once she attached it to her report along with the subject line, "This is what protecting black genius looks like in academia," the story transformed, not from outrage, but into something unignorable. Her inbox blew up within hours. Journalists from The Atlantic, NPR, and ProPublica reached out. Anonymous alumni forwarded her private screenshots of group chats between faculty chats, mocking Malik, some using racist dog whistles, masked as academic critique. One thread read, He's a statistical outlier, not a representative success, dangerous to position him as a model. Another, we shouldn't reward disorder. He didn't follow protocol. Why are we acting like he deserves special treatment? But it wasn't special treatment Evelyn was fighting for. It was recognition. She uploaded the full report to a public link, a 42-page PDF titled, Walled Gardens, Racial Exclusion in Elite STEM Departments. Inside were a decade's worth of admission statistics. Black applicants accepted, 3 black students who graduated with honors in the department. It included charts showing how research grants were disproportionately allocated, how tenure tracks for white male professors averaged 7 years, while candidates of color were quietly weeded out in 3. She included quotes from student exit surveys. I stopped raising my hand because no one believed my answers. I loved math until I started feeling like a trespasser. It was methodical, emotionally restrained, but undeniable. The report was downloaded 80,000 times in the first 3 days. By the end of the week, it hit 200, and suddenly the narrative shifted, not away from Malik, but around him. No longer was he the anomaly. He was the exposure, the proof that the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. Evelyn was invited onto a national panel about diversity in education. She declined. Instead, she forwarded the invitation to Malik. He didn't respond, but she hoped he saw it. Meanwhile, Wellesley College went quiet. Administrators avoided eye contact. Campus PR issued a brief statement. We are aware of the concerns raised and are reviewing internal policy. Hate has no place on our campus.
The usual line.
No apology. No action. But then came the alumni. One by one, former students, especially black and brown graduates, began speaking out. Evelyn's inbox filled with their stories. One wrote, I left math entirely because I got tired of proving I belonged in every single room. Another, they called me angry every time I challenged a mistake. But when a white student did it, they called him curious. Dozens shared similar patterns. Racist microaggressions, biased evaluations, disappearing mentorship. Their stories were like tiles. Evelyn's report was just the mosaic's beginning. Then came the backlash. A week after the report went public, Evelyn was called into an emergency board meeting. 10 men and 2 women sat at a long, shining table. Only one person of color. The dean opened the conversation. Dr. Harper, while we understand your intentions, your actions have placed the university under intense scrutiny. Donors are nervous. Evelyn folded her hands calmly. Maybe they should be. A vice provost leaned forward. This isn't just about you. You've compromised trust, between departments, between faculty. I exposed the truth. You weaponized it. Evelyn leaned in. Tell me which part of the data was a lie. Silence. They didn't argue the content. They argued the timing, the delivery, the tone. Always tone. Later that day, Evelyn received a call from an old friend in the development office. Someone she'd mentored years ago, now in charge of donor relations. Her voice was tight. I'm going to tell you something I'm not supposed to. Okay. One of our top donors, the Hawthorne Foundation, is threatening to pull their funding. Over the report? Not just the report. Malik.
What?
They said, and I quote, we will not continue to support an institution that rewards disruptive narratives over institutional excellence. Evelyn's breath caught. They want him gone. They said either he disappears from the classroom and press, or their $6.8 million pledge evaporates. She hung up without saying goodbye. Sat in her car for 10 full minutes before turning the key. That evening, Evelyn met with Rosa on a park bench near the apartment. Malik sat on the swing, watching the sunset but not really seeing it. Evelyn told Rosa everything. The report, the fallout, the donor threat. Rosa listened quietly, jaw tight. So what happens now? She asked. Evelyn was silent. Then Malik stood up, walked over. They think their money can erase me, he said. They've done it before, Rosa muttered. Malik looked at Evelyn, his eyes steady. What if we made it cost them to try? A key donor threatens to pull millions unless Malik disappears. 3 days after the donor threat reached Evelyn's ears, an email landed in her inbox with a subject line so strange it seemed like spam. Subject, private inquiry regarding Mr. Malik James. Urgent and confidential. The sender was a name she recognized instantly. Dr. Adrian Westfield. To the world he was a myth. A billionaire mathematician turned recluse. Former Harvard faculty, Fields Medal winner by 33, and creator of one of the most successful quantitative hedge funds in U.S. history. 10 years ago, he'd vanished from the academic scene. No public appearances, no interviews, just rumors of a private math institute somewhere in Vermont. Invite only, no tuition, no press, no bureaucracy. And now he wanted to talk about Malik. Ellen called the number provided. A voice answered. Sharp, efficient, British. Dr. Harper, thank you for calling. Dr. Westfield has been following the media surrounding your student. He would like to speak with both of you privately. This isn't some PR stunt. No. This is something entirely different.
They arranged a meeting in a week.
Private jet, private hangar, a car to pick them up. Evelyn told Rosa first. Rosa's reaction was wary. People with money don't just offer things. They take things. He's not asking for anything, Evelyn said. Not yet. He will. Malik didn't say anything at first. Then finally, I want to hear him out. But I'm not leaving you in the dark. The drive to Vermont was quiet. Snow hugged the narrow roads leading up the mountain. The estate appeared like something out of a movie. All glass and stone, surrounded by pine and silence. Dr. Adrian Westfield met them in the study. He looked like a man carved out of isolation. Tall, silver-bearded, eyes sharp but weary. The room smelled of old paper and cedar. Dozens of blackboards lined the walls, filled with notes and formulas that shifted as the sun moved. He didn't shake hands. He just nodded and gestured to 2 chairs. Then, without pleasantries, he began. You've done what most systems can't. Malik, you've made intuition visible. I've seen your Riemann sketch. It's imperfect. It's chaotic. But it's alive. And rare. Malik sat still. Cautious. So why me? Because I've spent 20 years building a sanctuary for the minds institutions don't know how to hold. You're not the first. He stood and walked toward a window, hands clasped behind his back. The world wants you in a cage, either as a token or a threat. I offer you something else. No cameras, no donors, just learning, full freedom, resources, mentorship, access to the world's best minds. At what cost? Malik asked. Westfield turned. Only one thing. You leave everything behind. No media, no public identity. Your past is a closed chapter. Malik frowned. Including my mother. Including everything. This place runs on clarity. No distractions. No anchor. There it was. The fine print. They let Malik walk the estate alone, while Evelyn stayed behind to speak further with Westfield.
He's a child, she said.
He's a phenomenon, Westfield replied. And phenomena are rare. They require separation to fully form. If he stays where he is, he will be crushed under expectation. Here he becomes what he was meant to be. At the cost of who he is? Sometimes, Westfield said quietly. That's the price of evolution. On the ride back, Malik was silent for most of the trip. Evelyn waited. Then finally he spoke. I get it now. That's what they all want. The schools, the news, him. They want a version of me they can control. It's not control. He's offering you peace. No, he's offering me escape. But I don't want to disappear, Evelyn. I want to exist. Here, loud. She turned to look at him. His voice wasn't angry. It was clear, resolute. I'm not running. Not from my mother. Not from the hate. Not from anything. If I let them isolate me, I lose. I become what they want. Quiet brilliance. Not disruptive brilliance. So, no. The next morning, Evelyn sent her reply to Westfield. Polite. Grateful. Firm. Malik James declines your offer. He's choosing to stay. An hour later, she received a 1-sentence response. He just chose the harder path. And that's how I know he's real. Malik says no. Why? Malik didn't sleep the night after turning down Adrian Westfield's offer. Not because he doubted himself, but because he didn't know what to do next. When you say no to the world's biggest shortcut, the silence afterward feels heavier than applause. Evelyn checked in the next morning, expecting uncertainty. Instead, she found him focused, sitting cross-legged on her office floor, sorting through a stack of printouts, articles and charts. What are you doing? She asked. Looking for the cracks. Cracks. He pointed to a map of Boston's public high schools, a spreadsheet overlaying test scores, median income, and access to AP STEM courses. These are the schools where I never would have made it, because they never had the tools to even see me. For the first time, Evelyn understood. Malik wasn't trying to prove himself to the world anymore. He was trying to understand why the world never expected him to exist in the first place. And he wasn't angry. He was intentional. In the days that followed, Evelyn watched him shift. He declined more interviews. He avoided press. When a national academic foundation offered him a $100,000 youth achievement grant, he turned it down. Why? She asked. Because I'm not going to be their poster boy. That money could open doors. Then they should have opened them already. Without me. The rejection went viral. Half the internet called him arrogant. The other half called him a revolutionary. Malik walked the middle. He went back to Wellesley's campus. Not to sit in classes, but to study in the back of the science library, surrounded by chalkboards and silence. Every day he carried the same notebook, a battered spiral-bound one, with pages falling out. It wasn't filled with equations. It was filled with questions. How many gifted kids were invisible? How many teachers mistook survival for apathy? How many black students had brilliance beaten out of them, not with fists but by silence? Rosa watched him one night, eyes filled with something like grief. I thought I was protecting him, she told Evelyn quietly. By keeping him small, by keeping him safe. You were, Evelyn said. But now he's choosing something else. And I'm scared I'll lose him to it. Evelyn understood. Greatness had a way of swallowing people whole. But Malik was different. He didn't want to rise above anyone. He wanted to lift from below. The next time Evelyn asked him about Westfield's offer, Malik said something that stayed with her for days. He wanted me to trade my roots for wings. But my roots are the only reason I fly the way I do. She wrote that down. By the second week of his quiet return, Evelyn noticed something else. Malik was watching the younger kids on campus. Custodians' children, cafeteria workers' sons, kids who waited in empty classrooms while their parents finished their shifts. He noticed their boredom, their wandering. He saw himself in them. That's when he said it. One afternoon, as they walked past the Wellesley Observatory, he turned to Evelyn and said, I want to start something. Like what? A school. No, not a school. A place. A room. Just one. For now. For what? He stopped. For the kids like me. The ones nobody's looking at. I want to teach them what I taught myself. Before the system teaches them not to believe in their own minds. Evelyn stared at him. Not shocked. Moved. That's radical. No, he said. It's necessary. He started outlining it that night. He called it the Basement Project, because that's where forgotten brilliance lives. In basements, in boiler rooms, in closets behind janitor stations. It would be small at first. Just a Saturday meetup in a borrowed space. Free. Quiet. Word of mouth only. No photos. No press. Just learning. He scribbled in his notebook. Genius isn't rare. Opportunity is. Ellen watched him pace the room. Ideas spilling faster than he could write them down. But Malik, she said finally. You're only 15. Exactly. If I wait, someone else will tell this story for me, and they'll get it wrong. He looked up. This isn't about me. It's about the next me. Malik proposes starting something radical and risky. They found the space by accident, which felt right. Malik and Evelyn had been touring community centers and after-school programs, every visit ending with a pamphlet and a polite refusal, when a custodian at Dunbar Middle School overheard them in the hallway. His name was Mr. Lionel Jacobs, 30 years with the district, the kind of man who knew which radiators lied and which lights flickered back to life if you kicked the baseboard twice. You looking for a room nobody uses? He asked, leaning on his mop like a cane. Malik nodded. A quiet one. Mr. Jacobs smiled like he'd been waiting years to be asked. Follow me. He led them down a stairwell that smelled like chalk dust and old winters. At the bottom he jimmied a door with a key that looked like it belonged to a ship. The lights clicked on reluctantly, revealing a low-ceilinged room with 2 dented file cabinets, a stack of retired textbooks and a green chalkboard pitted with time. Pipes ran along the ceiling like ribs. The floor was scuffed, not dirty. The air felt tired rather than stale. It used to be a storage room for AV carts, Mr. Jacobs said. Then the AV carts broke. Ellen ran her hand along the chalk tray. How often is it used now? Only when we need to hide flood buckets, he said, and winked. You put in a work order for miscellaneous storage. I'll mark it occupied. Nobody bothers an occupied basement. He slid a spiral notebook across the table. Inside were line after line of names and phone numbers. Parents who asked me for tutors their kids could trust, he said. No money for it. Not asking you to work for free. just saying the lines already formed. Malik looked at Evelyn. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The room had already said yes. They cleaned it in an afternoon. Mr. Jacobs found 4 mismatched tables and 12 chairs with gum fossils under the seats. Evelyn brought a box of chalk and a used projector from a faculty closet that no one would miss. Malik flattened the old posters and taped them back up, place value charts, a faded number line, a laminated multiplication table someone had once cared about. He wrote on the board, "The Basement Project." Then, under it, smaller, no grades, no permission, just math. Rosa arrived after her shift, shoulders aching, eyes tired. She looked at the words on the board, then at her son, who was standing taller than she had ever seen him stand. "You sure?" she asked. "No," he said, honest. "But I want this more than I'm afraid of it." She nodded and started wiping the dust from windowsills. No one ever noticed. Then we make it clean. The first Saturday, 6 kids showed up. They came in pairs, in the clothes they wore every day, with eyebrows raised like they expected a sales pitch. A 7th stood in the doorway but wouldn't come in, hovering like a question mark. "I'm Malik," he said, picking up the chalk. "This is a place where you can be wrong loudly." They blinked. He drew a 3x3 grid. "Pretend the floor is lava, and each square is safe only if the numbers talk to each other. How do we cross?" He wrote, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then a diagonal slit. A girl with a purple backpack, Tiana, squinted. "You mean like Sudoku?" "Kind of," Malik said, "but with rules we make up together, and then prove are necessary." Evelyn watched him from the back, the way he bent the room's attention toward curiosity without threatening their pride. He didn't ask what they knew. He asked what they wanted to know. He didn't say proof. He said why this has to be true even if you're mad at it. By the 3rd Saturday, there were 14 kids. Mr. Jacobs had added a fan and an extension cord that hummed like an old radio. Rosa started bringing orange slices and peanut butter crackers. In the corner, a battered speaker played quiet jazz that softened the edges of the fluorescent lights. Malik built everything from the ground up. He taught them how to test a hunch, how to be suspicious of a result that felt too pretty, how to keep a mistake on the board long enough to learn its secret. He showed them how vectors could be drawn like arrows, and then treated like sentences, how matrices could become conversations if you knew how to listen. Tiana stayed late one afternoon to finish a problem. She was 11, peppermint braid beads clicking every time she tilted her head. "Why does everyone call me shy?" she asked, chalk hovering over the final line. "Because you're precise," Malik said. "They think that's the same thing." She finished the line, stepped back, and blinked like a door inside her had opened. Oh. A boy named Jaden never sat. He circled the room like a satellite. He came alive when Malik assigned him to be error hunter, a role with dignity instead of detention. Another, Dario, wrote with his left hand and erased with his sleeve. His father worked nights and slept in the afternoons, so he spent the last hour of every session watching Mrs. Rosa turn the snack wrappers into a neat pile, as if tediness was a way to spell safety. Evelyn's job was scaffolding. She drafted lesson arcs that felt like games until they were theorems. She printed a simple code of conduct, 4 lines, no jargon, respect time, respect minds, respect the room, keep going. She kept the attendance sheet handwritten and off the internet. She knew what visibility could do. Still, word spread, not because they wanted it to, but because a kid who goes home with a bright engine in his chest can't help making a sound. A mother stopped Evelyn in the hallway one Wednesday evening, lunchbox in one hand, a bundle of folded uniforms in the other. "My son hasn't asked me to turn off the TV in 3 years, she said, surprised into a smile. "Yesterday he did," said his brain was doing something spicy. A father called Rosa on her way to work. "He made us late to church," he said, half proud. Arguing about infinity in the mirror. With growth came small frictions. A teacher upstairs asked to see a curriculum map. Evelyn brought a stack of handwritten sequences. The teacher frowned at the chalk dust, like it might be contagious. A vice principal sent an email with bullet points about building usage. Mr. Jacobs marked it, received, and quietly added a fresh label to the room's door. Storage testing overflow. Evelyn smiled when she saw it. The best camouflage is the truth sideways. What changed most wasn't the kids' answers. It was their posture. They began to lean in. Their laughter got cleaner. Tiana started bringing her little brother, who added fractions out loud like prayers. Jaden slipped a worn Rubik's Cube out of his pocket and solved it under the table between steps, rhythm syncing with the chalk strikes. One afternoon, Malik wrote a problem on the board that seemed to undo the room, a puzzle about how many rectangles hid inside a grid, if you counted patiently and refused to rush. Too many, Dario groaned. It's like counting raindrops. Then we need an umbrella, Malik said, and showed them how to build a formula. That wasn't a trick, but the map of the trick. He asked them to invent every small rectangle first, to notice what repeated and what didn't, to decide which parts were themselves and which were masks. They built it together like a raft. When they reached the last line, the room breathed out at once. A sound Evelyn had heard in lecture halls, and living rooms, and hospital corridors. The human sound of being allowed. Near the end of that session, a girl who hadn't spoken in 3 weeks raised her hand, not to talk, but to keep it raised. Nobody told her to put it down. Malik nodded to her and said, "Hold that thought for next time." She smiled without lowering her arm, as if that counted as finishing something. The basement project began accumulating artifacts. A jar of broken chalk pieces labeled proof crumbs, a file folder titled Weird Ideas That Worked, a sheet of paper tacked above the light switch. Be kind to future you, write it down. Then the first real test arrived. A district email landed on Evelyn's phone late Thursday night. A request to cease unauthorized instructional activity pending review. Attached was a form letter about liability, followed by an invitation to propose an official after-school program through a grant cycle that had closed 3 months earlier. She swore under her breath, then forwarded it to Mr. Jacobs. He responded with a photograph of a faded plaque down the hallway that read, "This space dedicated to community enrichment by vote of the PTA, 1998. Beneath it he wrote, "Sometimes the past signs our permission slips." Evelyn drove to Rosa's kitchen table, legal pads, coffee that tasted like the night before a protest. They drafted a reply that cited policy without groveling, and requested a meeting to align safety protocols with equity goals. Evelyn knew the trick: speak fluent bureaucracy back to the bureaucrats. Never give them the pleasure of believing you don't understand their language. Saturday came anyway. 18 kids this time. A father stayed too, hovering against the doorframe, until Malik handed him a marker and said, "You're on team check the checkers. It pays in crackers." The man laughed, and took the pen like a ceremony. Midway through, the unexpected twist surfaced in the form of a thin envelope slid under the door. Mr. Jacobs bent, picked it up, and passed it to Evelyn without commentary. Inside was a typed note with no header: "Cease and desist. You are not accredited to teach minors mathematics at this facility. Continued violation will be reported to authorities."
No signature, no authority named. Just a threat wearing a suit 2 sizes too big.
Evelyn considered stopping. Rosa's eyes met hers across the room. A question, a plea, a memory of SUV windows and camera lenses. Malik kept teaching. He diagrammed a proof of the Pythagorean theorem with paper squares that the kids cut and rearranged themselves. He kept his tone even. If the room was a boat, his voice stayed the same size, whatever the wave. When the session ended, he dismissed the younger ones first so their small hands wouldn't feel the air shift. As the last kids packed up, Malik erased the board and left one line: "Bring a friend who thinks they're bad at this." He capped the marker. The click echoed louder than it should. "Who sent the note?" he asked. Ellen shook her head. "Anonymous." Mr. Jacobs grunted. "Cowards put their names only on buildings." The following Wednesday, the vice principal arrived in the doorway with a clipboard and a smile that used too many teeth. "We'll need to formalize this," she said, voice cottoned with concern. "Background checks, fee structures, PTO oversight. Our donors worry about unsupervised spaces." Ellen kept her posture neutral. "We welcome oversight that doesn't price out the families we serve." "Of course," the vice principal said, already not listening. "Also, in the interest of fairness, we'll need to balance enrollment to represent the broader district." Malik understood the euphemism. "You mean fewer kids from this building? Representation matters," she said, and left before the sentence had to make sense. They met that night in the room with the lights off, the projector throwing numbers on the ceiling. Rosa sat between them like a fulcrum. "They're going to shut us down," she said. "Not if we make ourselves too public to erase," Evelyn said. "That's what started this," Rosa reminded her gently. "Public is what hurts." Malik stared at the ceiling grid. "Public almost destroyed me. but hiding almost did too. He sat up. We go hybrid. Small in person, bigger online. Weekly problems printed and passed out at grocery stores and barbershops. No login, no data mining, just codes that unlock solutions filmed on a cheap phone. Anyone can join. No one has to prove they deserve to. Eleanor nodded slowly. We can do that. We'll need a name that can fit on a flyer and a grandmother's refrigerator. Rosa smiled for the first time that night. Make it sound like a secret you're invited to. They printed 50 half-page flyers the next day. Basement project, free math club, Saturdays 10-12. Bring your confusion. We'll bring the chalk. A phone number at the bottom connected to a voicemail that said only the time and the address and you're welcome here. 3 Saturdays later, there were 25 kids. The room didn't shrink, it sharpened. Malik moved like a conductor, dividing into clusters, pattern trackers, counterexample hunters, definition editors. He handed the quietest kid the job with the most authority. Call time when an idea started running laps instead of distance. Parents began to linger in the hallway. Half smiles, guarded hope. A grandmother brought a tray of macaroni pie and told Malik, "My boy's been seeing numbers in the shower. Don't you dare turn that off." Evelyn kept expecting joy to feel like a victory. Instead, it felt like grace owed and finally paid. Which is why the sound of shoes on the stairwell hit so wrong. Not kid shoes. Not teacher shoes. 2 sets. Measured. Heavy. The room stilled in a way kids recognize before adults do. Mr. Jacobs' head tilted. He set down the mop like a lever he might need to lean on. The door opened. 2 officers stepped in. Uniforms squared. Hands at their belts but not resting. Eyes doing the kind of scanning that claims a place before a voice does. Afternoon. The taller one said. Tone practiced. We received a call about unauthorized instruction of minors and possible safety violations. Evelyn felt Rosa step closer without touching her. A shield made of breath. Malik took 1 step forward, then stopped, remembering how power expects you to move. This is a math club, he said, keeping his voice level. Voluntary, supervised. Names? The officer asked. No, Rosa said, before anyone else could speak. You don't need children's names. We'll need the organizer, the officer replied, shifting his weight toward Malik. Ellen stepped between gently, not as a barrier but an introduction. I'm Dr. Evelyn Harper. This program operates under community enrichment usage, established by the PTA. The second officer glanced at the chalkboard, now a field of rectangles and reasoning. Who filed the complaint? Evelyn asked. Anonymous tip, he said. Of course it was. The room waited, the way a room waits when it knows the truth won't be invited to testify. The taller officer cleared his throat. Until this is sorted with the district, we're going to have to ask you to suspend activities and vacate the premises. A murmur went through the kids like wind through a stand of brittle grass. Malik looked at the rectangles on the board, all the ways a single shape could hold more than anyone assumed, and then at the door where the world had arrived wearing a badge and a blank. He nodded once. Not agreement, but a clock starting. Okay, he said. We'll pack up. Ellen began stacking papers that didn't want to be stacked. Rosa put lids on containers that had never needed lids. Mr. Jacobs unplugged the fan, and the room felt hotter at once. As the kids filed past the officers, Tiana paused, chin up, breath steady. We're coming back, right? Malik didn't answer immediately. He turned, took a piece of chalk and wrote 1 line under the club name. See you upstairs. The chalk snapped. The taller officer glanced at the broken piece, like evidence. Upstairs where? He asked. Malik capped the marker he wasn't holding. A tiny defiance. You'll hear. The officers exchanged a look that said they didn't like riddles. The shorter one leaned toward the taller. Voice low but not low enough. Dispatch said caller flagged possible indoctrination. Ellen felt the word land like a slur in a new suit. Indoctrination. The newest way to say know your place. She met Malik's eyes. He didn't blink. Then the taller officer lifted his radio to his shoulder, pressed the button and said, Basement cleared. Advise. Static answered. Then a voice. Copy. Hold position. Caller is en route, and request to identify violators. Caller? Rosa asked, words tight. Who? Malik said. Footsteps sounded on the stairwell again. Slower this time. Confident. Familiar to no one, and to everyone who'd ever had a door held for them because their checkbook walked in first. The officer stepped aside as a man in a navy suit appeared in the doorway, a laminated visitor badge swinging from his pocket like punctuation. He smiled with the ease of someone who'd never been told he didn't belong. "Good afternoon," he said, eyes sweeping the room and landing on Malik last, the way a king might regard a fire he paid to have put out. "I'm here on behalf of the Hawthorne Foundation." He reached into his jacket and produced a letter on thick paper. "Per our conversation with the district, this activity ends today." Malik stared at the letter, then at the man's untroubled face, something fierce and bright forming behind his calm. The man continued, too pleased with his timing to notice the room setting like concrete around him. "And if it doesn't," he added, "the consequences will be immediate." The police stand by as a donor's representative arrives with a letter to shut them down. Malik lifts the chalk again anyway, about to say something that will make leaving impossible. The man from the Hawthorne Foundation stood in the doorway like a final answer, the letter in his hand crisp enough to cut. The officers didn't move. They didn't have to. Power was already performing. The kids watched with quiet, furious eyes. Miss Jacobs squeezed his mop handle until his knuckles blanched. Rose's breath came slow and deliberate, the way you breathe when you're keeping a dam from breaking. Evelyn spoke first, not to the donor's man but to the officers. "Are we under arrest?" "No, ma'am," the taller one said. "Then we're leaving," she replied, taking the letter without touching the man's fingers. "And we'll see you upstairs." The man smiled without warmth. "You won't be permitted upstairs." "Then we'll bring upstairs outside," Malik said gently. They filed out, kids first, parents next, then Mr. Jacobs with the last folding chair under his arm, like a banner. In the hallway, the donor's man tried to catch Malik's eye, to turn this into a negotiation between a king and a supplicant. Malik kept walking, not faster, not slower, just true. Outside, the March air held its breath. The playground fence rattled a tired song. Tiana tugged Malik's sleeve. "Is math cancelled?" He crouched to her height. "Math doesn't cancel," he said. "Sometimes it changes rooms." They gathered on the cracked blacktop. Evelyn set the chalkboard easel someone had rescued from a closet. Malik wrote one line, "Define fair." The kids argued softly while parents formed a loose ring. The officers stood by the door at ease, but not absent, radios hissing intermittent static. The donor's man came outside, letter still in hand. "If you continue to hold unsanctioned instruction," he announced to the air, "the district will interpret this as trespassing." Evelyn met his gaze. "We're not in the building." He blinked, recalibrating. "Then the district will escalate to safety violations." Rosa stepped forward. "Safety violations for chalk?"
The content, he said, recovering, may not be age appropriate.
Malik nearly laughed. "Numbers, radicalization," the man said, as if he were reading the word for the first time. The word landed in the circle like a slur in a suit. A father muttered, "They always change the name on the same thing." Elowen took the letter, folded it neatly, and slid it into her bag. "We'll respond in writing." The man straightened his tie, already looking past them. "Our foundation has invested greatly in this district. We expect alignment." "Alignment," Mr. Jacobs repeated, like he was tasting a too sweet candy. The officers shifted. One spoke into his radio, then nodded to Evelyn. "Ma'am, we need to clear the lot by 1 p.m. "It's 12:42, she said. "We'll be done at 12:40. Malik turned to the kids. 30 minutes, he said. "Today's lesson, how to turn a threat into a theorem." The circle leaned in. He drew a rectangle on the easel, then divided it, not evenly, but in stubborn, imperfect squares. "They say we're trespassing," he said, "but what we're really doing is carving space out of a shape that pretends to be whole." He handed Tiana the chalk. "Your turn. Show me how to make a perfect square out of what isn't." She started to outline offsets. Others joined. The parents watched their children rearrange edges that had never been theirs, making something precise from a boundary's lie. At 12:41, they stopped. Malik erased the board, leaving a faint ghost grid of chalk. He looked at the donor's man. "See you next week." The man's smile thinned. "We'll see."
They did.
By Monday morning, the emails began. Subject lines that sounded like warnings and read like nets. From Dunbar Middle School facilities. Effective immediately, due to code violations, unsettled dust exposure, and unapproved electrical extension. Room B3 is closed, pending inspection. From District Legal. Cease and desist. Unlicensed instruction places minors at risk and exposes the district to liability. Remove all publicly posted invitations. From Anonymous. Indoctrinating children with equity math. You people should be ashamed. Evelyn forwarded everything to a folder labeled Keep. She answered the district with policy citations. Mr. Jacobs had quietly supplied PTA historical usage, community enrichment provisions, a copy of the 1998 resolution no one had read since it was signed. That afternoon, the local paper ran a column accusing her of rogue pedagogy. The author used words like dangerous, unverified, unauthorized. They quoted a concerned philanthropist who worried about ideological capture in STEM. The comments boiled over, keep politics out of math. Who's paying these people? Teach them to mop before they teach them to integrate. Rosa read the piece with jaw locked. They want the floor clean more than they want the mind free, she said. Malik's phone lit up with messages he didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the next problem, the next plan. They pivoted. By Wednesday, Evelyn and Rosa were folding printer paper zines at the kitchen table. Basement Project, Issue 1. On the front, a hand-drawn staircase, with numbers as steps. Inside, 2 puzzles, 1 proof, 1 story. A short How I Learned to See Patterns in the Grocery Line, written by Jaden, spelled beautifully wrong and exactly right. At the back, a hotline number that wasn't a number at all, but a voicemail box with one instruction. Leave your first name, and the name of the person who told you you couldn't. We'll call you back with a problem only you can solve. They dropped stacks at barbershops, corner stores, the laundromat, the church bulletin board. Mr. Jacobs slipped a bundle into the folders of the cafeteria staff, telling each person, this one's for your brilliant ones. The district removed their flyers from the school entrance. The barbers put them back up in their mirrors. On Saturday, 32 kids came. They couldn't fit in the basement, even if it had been open. So they met on the playground again. Parents brought camp chairs. Mr. Jacobs brought an orange extension cord that hummed like stubborn hope, and a portable speaker that played a low, steady beat. The kids counted to it. Mid-lesson, a code inspector arrived with a clipboard and a camera. You cannot use amplification without a permit, he announced. To no one specifically. This isn't amplification, Evelyn said. This is rhythm. Same difference, he replied, taking photos of a chalkboard like it might be evidence in a trial. He wrote a citation. He handed it to Evelyn. He left. Rosa took the paper, flipped it over, and used the blank side to list the snack rota. Power rights, mothers repurpose. By week 3 of the siege, their detractors had multiplied. An online watchdog blog published grainy photos of Malik at the chalkboard, accusing him of cult of personality tactics. A radio caller said, if these parents wanted better math, they should move to better neighborhoods. Another said, we don't need basement math, we need discipline. Every insult was an advertisement. Attendance rose to 40. They split the group into rings, the littles in a circle, drawing patterns with chalk on the blacktop, the middles under the basketball hoop turning word problems into skits, the older kids leaning against the fence, arguing the ethics of fair curves, and whether fairness should be measured or made. A grandmother arrived with a folding table and a stack of plastic-wrapped graph paper, as if she'd been stockpiling hope and finally found a place to spend it. A teenager from across town showed up, cheeks pink from the bus ride, asking if she could just watch. Malik handed her a marker and made her keeper of the definitions. She smiled like someone had been saving the word keeper for her. Evelyn kept waiting for despair to catch up. It didn't. Each attempt to shut them down made the circle tighter, the voices braver. At night she answered legal threats with footnotes in case law. In the morning she watched Malik translate those footnotes into games that taught kids how to build truth that didn't tip when pushed. And then the smear that should have sunk them arrived. A viral video, heavily edited, spliced snippets of Malik's lessons with slogans he never said. Over his voice they plastered, equity over accuracy, feelings over facts. The video ended with a shot of Rosa carrying snacks, slowed down to make kindness look like conspiracy. The comments burned. But something else happened too. Something no one planned. A math teacher from a different school posted a thread, dismantling the clip, timestamp by timestamp. A statistician added a point-by-point debunk. A civil rights lawyer explained how unauthorized instruction is used as a cudgel against community organizing. The thread trended. The video's creator locked their account. The next Saturday, 62 kids came. It rained. No one left. Mr. Jacobs produced a blue tarp from nowhere. Parents held it aloft with broom handles. The tarp sagged. Kids laughed when water pooled. then shifted to push the water off in a coordinated wave that felt like proof of concept for something bigger. When the rain stopped, the sky looked cleaned. Eleanor exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding for years. "Look at them," she whispered to Rosa. "No one's performing. They're just free." "Free doesn't last," Rosa said, not unkindly. "But maybe it can recur." 2 days later, a letter with the state seal arrived by courier. No anonymous fonts. This time just embossed authority and a signature in ink that hadn't yet dried. Commonwealth Education Standards Board. Re-invitation to pilot recognition. Basement project. Eleanor read aloud, Rosa at her elbow. Malik standing, arms crossed, preparing to dislike whatever came next. Given the increasing visibility and community impact of your program, the board is prepared to authorize the Basement Project as an officially recognized supplemental mathematics initiative under the Commonwealth's Community Learning Partnerships. Malik's eyebrow rose despite himself. An official path meant doors that couldn't be slammed without noise. Evelyn kept reading. Recognition is contingent upon adoption of board-approved curriculum benchmarks. 2. Appointment of a certified program co-director nominated by the board. 3. Compliance with district enrollment, balancing to ensure representative participation. 4. Restrictions on public communication without prior board review. She stopped. The room went quiet in that way. Heavy paper makes rooms quiet. Rosa broke it. "Say it in everyday words." Evelyn swallowed. "They'll bless it if they get to own it." Malik took the letter, scanned the bullet points slowly, then set it on the table like a specimen. "Who's the co-director?" he asked. There was a second sheet. A name at the bottom. Dr. Ronald Hayworth, the math department chair. The man who had tried to erase him with policies and tone. Rosa laughed once. A sound with no humor in it. "They want to put the fox in charge of the lock." Mr. Jacobs leaned on the doorframe, gaze soft with anger. "Tower don't change its handwriting just because it uses thicker paper." Evelyn looked at Malik. "What do you want to do?" He didn't answer. He picked up a piece of chalk instead, walked to the easel, and drew a square, then another inside it, and another. He kept going until the center was a tight brightness. "Nested conditions," he said quietly. "Each one squeezes the last, until there's no room to breathe." He wrote under the squares, "What's the cost of recognition?" No one spoke. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop and sighed back into motion. A siren moaned far away, and gave up. Eleanor folded the letter back into its heavy envelope, feeling the weight of it. "They think they're offering legitimacy. They're offering silence," Malik said. "With credentials." He set the chalk down. "If we say yes, we tell every kid who showed up in the rain that we were only brave until the state handed us a pen." Rosa touched his shoulder. "If you say no, they'll come harder." "I know." He took a breath. That same breath he'd been learning to take in rooms not built for him. Then he looked at Evelyn, and something like a plan was already forming in the angle of his jaw. "Let's call a meeting," he said. "Everyone who's touched a piece of this. Parents, kids, Mr. Jacobs, anyone who brought snacks. We'll decide together. And if we say no, we don't say no quietly." Ellen nodded. "We'll need allies." "We have them," he said. "They just don't know we're gonna ask yet." He reached for the envelope again, folded one corner backward like a dog ear, a mark that said "not yet," and soon at the same time. Then his phone buzzed. An unknown number, area code from the capital. He stared at it, letting it ring once, twice, 3 times. He answered on the 4th. "This is Malik," he said. A composed voice came through, measured as a metronome. "Mr. James, this is Chairwoman Levesque, from the Commonwealth Education Standards Board. I trust you've received our letter. I wanted to offer you a personal assurance. With our recognition, doors will open you cannot imagine." He looked at the chalk-stained tarp folded on the chair, at the notes in the zine, at the jar of proof crumbs that had turned broken into common. "Ma'am," he said, polite as a polished stone. "I've already opened one." Her silence was cool. "Then, without our terms, your program cannot continue. Consider the children." He held the phone away for a moment, like you hold a flame to see its shape. "I am," he said, and hung up. The room held still with him. He exhaled once, long and leveling. "Okay," he said to Evelyn, to Rosa, to the room that had learned how to fit more people than it was designed to hold. "We're going to need a bigger chalkboard." He glanced at the envelope again, then at the door, as footsteps approached in the hall, measured, official, 2 sets, The sound of people who assume the room will stand when they enter. Get ready, he said, eyes clear. The knob turned. The state offers official recognition, but only if they appoint a board-nominated co-director, Dr. Hayworth, adopt scripted benchmarks, and muzzle public speech. The door opens on their answer. The envelope sat on the table like a dare. Its heavy cardstock, embossed seal, and elegant font made it look more like an award than a contract. But everyone in the room knew what it really was. A muzzle dressed up in formality. Ellen read the conditions again, slower this time, as if repetition would make them less insulting. The basement project must align its lessons with state-approved benchmarks. Translation: strip the creativity. Remove the parts that let kids invent paths, instead of memorizing them. The program must accept a board-nominated co-director to ensure academic integrity. Translation: Dr. Ronald Hayworth, the man who had tried to erase Malik from her classroom, would sit at the head of Malik's vision. All public statements must go through board review before release. Translation: silence the story, cut out the racial truth, and turn the basement project into a glossy brochure. It wasn't recognition. It was ownership. Ellen closed the letter and pressed her palms to her eyes. Rosa paced the kitchen, arms folded. Mr. Jacobs leaned against the counter, shaking his head like he'd seen this play before. Malik sat at the table, notebook open, pen unmoving. His face was calm, too calm, the kind of stillness that worried Evelyn more than anger. They want the basement project, Rosa said. But not the real basement project. Not the kids, not the mess, not the voices. They want the logo, not the life, Mr. Jacobs muttered. Evelyn looked at Malik. What do you think? He didn't answer right away. He drew a small square in his notebook, then another inside it, then another. Finally he spoke. This isn't about me, it's about the kids. If we say yes, they'll get more resources, more protection. And if you say yes, Rosa said sharply, you'll be standing next to a man who told you you didn't belong. Every picture they take will have his hand on your shoulder. Malik's pen tapped once, twice. That's the price of legitimacy. Ellen leaned forward. No, that's the price of erasure. They're telling you you're only real if they reshape you. Malik looked up, eyes clear. So the question is, do we want to be real in their eyes, or in ours? The following week the board scheduled a formal meeting. They wanted Malik and Evelyn to attend in person. A long mahogany table, microphones, and bottled water placed exactly 12 inches apart. The email invitation framed it as a chance to partner for sustainable success. Evelyn knew better. It was a stage, and they expected Malik to play the grateful role. In the days leading up to it, Evelyn prepared binders of student work, testimonials from parents, attendance numbers. She wanted to argue on paper, to show proof that the basement project wasn't chaos but structure. Malik, however, prepared differently. He spent hours in the library archives, scrolling through old newsletters, board minutes, donation records. Evelyn asked what he was looking for, but he just said, patterns. The night before the meeting, Rosa confronted him. You don't have to go in there, she said. You owe them nothing. Malik shook his head. I'm not going for them. I'm going for the kids. They think we'll bend. I want them to see why we won't.
Be careful, she whispered. People like them don't lose well.
The boardroom was colder than Evelyn expected. 10 members in suits, arranged like portraits. Dr. Ronald Hayworth sat near the center, posture smug, fingers steepled. He smiled faintly when Malik and Evelyn walked in, as if the game was already over. Mr. James, the chairwoman said warmly, we're so honored you're here. You've done remarkable work. Evelyn heard the unspoken, but Hayworth leaned forward. Of course, remarkable work must be guided, structured. We can help you elevate this project from a basement to a legitimate program. He let the word basement hang in the air, coated with disdain. Evelyn's fists clenched under the table. Malik, however, remained calm. And what do I have to give up for that? He asked. The chairwoman smiled tightly. Nothing essential, just adjustments, curriculum alignment, oversight, neutrality. Neutrality, Malik repeated, meaning no talk about why kids like us get left behind in the first place. Meaning focusing on the math, she corrected. Malik leaned back. Math is never just math. For an hour, Evelyn and Malik listened as the board laid out their offer. More funding, official status, protection under the state. But every benefit had a string. Every string tightened around Malik's throat. At the end, the chairwoman folded her hands. This is an extraordinary opportunity, Malik. You'd be wise to accept. All eyes turned to him. Evelyn expected him to say no, to refuse politely, to walk out with dignity. Instead, Malik reached into his backpack and pulled out a folder. I brought something too, he said. He laid out printed pages, meeting minutes, donation records, internal memos. Evelyn blinked. This was what he'd been gathering in the archives. The documents showed a pattern. Year after year, the same donor money tied to the same admission cycles. Notes about cultural fit, statistics that mirrored the data Evelyn had already leaked. But worse, a deliberate paper trail of exclusion, hidden in plain sight. Hayworth shifted in his chair. The chairwoman frowned. Where did you get this? She asked. Malik didn't answer. He simply tapped the papers. I don't want legitimacy that costs silence, he said. But I do want everyone outside this room to know what legitimacy here really means. Evelyn's heart pounded. He hadn't just prepared to refuse. He'd prepared to the boardroom, once so still, now buzzed with tension. The donors' names on those pages were powerful. Alumni, politicians, business leaders. If Malik made them public, the board wouldn't just lose control of him. They'd lose their carefully guarded image. The chairwoman's voice was calm but tight. Are you threatening us? Malik shook his head. I'm offering you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. What I do with it will be mine. Malik walks into the board meeting with evidence that could humiliate them all. The boardroom air tasted of varnish and old paper. Malik's documents stack photocopies of minutes. Donor memos, admissions tallies, lay on the table like a quiet detonation, its shrapnel measured in names and dates. No one moved at first. Then the chairwoman pressed her palms together, a cathedral built from fingers. Mr. James, she said softly, context matters. Exactly, Malik replied. So let's add it. He slid one last page free, a single sheet, hand-labeled in pencil, Access Ratio Index AI, draft. Lines of neat notation ran beneath, half math, half map. Evelyn had watched him build it night after night, turning bruised anecdotes into numbers, rumors into ratios. What is that? Hayworth asked. Too quick. A way to count the doors you swear don't exist. Malik said. Not just who gets in, but how many chances they had to even find the handle. He faced the row of suits. Calm. Precise. Admissions isn't a coin flip. He continued. It's a maze with some walls invisible, unless you're the one walking into them. Ari tallies the walls. He spoke without hurry, folding clarity over anger, until it held. For each high school in the state, number of advanced math offerings available, percentage of counselors per student, distance and commute time to the nearest calculus offering campus, rate of discipline referrals for disruption in math classes, librarian hours, teacher retention. For each admission cycle, average time a file sits before committee review, number of readers per file, presence of cultural fit notes, yield protection flags. Erie boiled them into one index, a measure not of merit, but of access. Then he paired it with an outcome variable, admissions, scholarships, honors track placements. The ratio between access and outcome became a number with a simple name and a merciless meaning. If ARI is low and outcomes are low, he said, that's neglect. If ARI is low and outcomes are high, that's resilience. If ARI is high and outcomes are high, that's privilege doing what privilege does. But if ARI is high and outcomes are low, he let the silence do its work. That's gatekeeping. A board member coughed into a fist. Hayworth's jaw moved once, side to side, a man testing a tooth he'd assumed was permanent. This is not peer-reviewed, the chairwoman said, finding her footing on a familiar stone. It will be, Evelyn answered before Malik could. By the fiercest peer group I know. Every mathematician who said he didn't belong. Malik slid his eyes to her, a flicker of gratitude, then back to the board. You offered to recognize us if we let you write our script, he said. Instead, we're recognizing you on the record, in numbers, without asking for your permission. The chairwoman's smile thinned. Be careful. Malik nodded. I am. He gathered the papers. We'll send you the public link at noon. Link? Hayworth said. We're open sourcing the model, Malik replied. Notebook code, definitions, data dictionary. We'll invite replication and correction. You can join that conversation, or try to make a phone call. He rose, the chair legs whispering against the polished floor. When he reached the door, He stopped, turned, and added, almost gently, "One more thing. When you talk about neutrality, remember math is never neutral about who gets to hold the chalk." They left before anyone could decide what to say. At Evelyn's kitchen table, the world shrank to keys clicking, coffee cooling, and Rose's quiet pacing. Malik uploaded the project to a public repository with a readme that sounded like a manifesto only because the truth had gone so long without formatting. The Access Ratio Index. A. Purpose quantify opportunity, not just outcome. Inputs, see data. Outputs, ARI per school, district and applicant cohort. Gatekeeping gradient, GG across review stages. License non-commercial. Community use free. Institutional use must cite. Public critiques welcome. Private threats will be posted. Ellen wrote an accompanying explainer, built for parents and students, as much as for scholars. If your school has one counselor for 900 kids, and no calculus, and a school across town has 4 counselors and a charter bus to the AP test site, your denial wasn't fair. Array shows why. Rosa read it once, then again. It's the difference between being told you're drowning and being shown the waterline, she said. At 11:59 a.m., Malik hovered over the publish button. His thumb shook once. He pressed noon. The page went live. For a few breathless minutes, nothing happened. Then everything did. A Berkeley statistician forked the code. A Cambridge postdoc posted a video walking through the notebook line by line. A high school teacher in Detroit uploaded ARI for her district. It lit up crimson where everyone had always pointed, but no one had measured. A data journalist from a major magazine asked for an interview. A civil rights lawyer DM'd asking for the sources. The most unexpected endorsement landed like a seal. Annals of Mathematics tweeted, "This is not a proof of a theorem. It is an argument for justice using the tools of our field. Worth your time." Within hours, the model had a name beyond its acronym. Kids called it the fairness fraction, a phrase so simple reporters could not resist. The thread explaining it crossed 1 million views by evening. Then came the first numbers Malik had feared and hoped for in equal measure. Schools he'd never set foot in, glowing an angry red. Their ARI low, their outcomes lower. Others well-resourced and pale in the yearbook, shining green. Their yield triumphantly high. A map rendered. The pattern formed. It looked like what everyone knew and no one could argue now that it was drawn to scale. The board released a statement by mid-afternoon. "We welcome continued dialogue." The word dialogue did no work. It had not already worn out. Unexpectedly, other statements followed, some with teeth. The state attorney general announced a preliminary inquiry into disparities in educational access and evaluation. A coalition of alumni posted an open letter, "We will not fund a future we wouldn't have survived." Within 24 hours, 2 mid-tier donors publicly paused their pledges. An anonymous account posted line items that matched the donor memo Malik had laid on the board table. A journalist confirmed them by dusk. Hayworth tried a countermove. A press quote about ensuring rigor, but an old email, his surfaced concerns about cultural fit, would prefer candidates who will thrive in our community norms. It traveled faster than his apology. Adrian Westfield sent nothing publicly. Privately, an invoice arrived in Evelyn's inbox from a cloud provider, a year of server time prepaid by AW Research. She stared at it. "Do we accept?" she asked. Rosa shrugged. "If the wind is blowing in the right direction, you can still use it even if you don't like who breathed." "We'll thank him quietly," Malik said. "And remember what he asked me to leave behind." They flipped a switch. The dashboard stopped lagging. People could zoom by district by decade, by the one school whose guidance office had never called a student's name without mispronouncing it. That night, the basement project met under the tarp again, this time with parents bringing notebooks of their own. Malik projected the map onto the brick. The kids oohed like fireworks were finally telling the truth. "What color are we?" Tiana asked, eyes bright. "Orange," Malik said, "which means we're running uphill." She nodded once. "Acceptance with edges. Then we get stronger legs." Jaden pointed to a green patch. "They got coaches and buses to the test. We got Mr. Jacobs' keyring."
Mr. Jacobs rattled it, a tintinnabulation that sounded, briefly, like bells.
Ellen watched a grandmother trace the legend with a finger, then press her palm flat against the red parts as if warmth might make them yield. "They always told us it was the kids," she whispered. "Turns out it was the roads." In the morning, ARI hit national news. Not as novelty, but as tool. A city council scheduled a hearing, waving printouts like receipts. A superintendent called Evelyn to ask whether aligning to Aerie would look like confession or competence. Both, she said. If you do it right. Then came the twist no one predicted. A district 2 states away announced a pilot, the basement standard, pledging to adjust admissions timelines, counselor loads, and AP access to push Aerie toward parity within 3 years. They tagged Malik in their post. He didn't retweet. He stared at the screen a long time, then typed, "Do the work even if we never tweet you," and put his phone face down. By afternoon, the board sent a second letter. Formal, clipped, pending further review. The board withdraws its co-director condition and curricular restrictions. They offered technical collaboration instead, a phrase that meant for now, they had decided not to pick a fight in public with math itself. Eleanor read the letter aloud. Rosa exhaled. Mr. Jacobs smiled into his coffee like a man watching a stubborn door. Learn the difference between shut and closed. Temporary, Rosa said. Everything is, Evelyn replied. But sometimes temporary is long enough to remake the room. They were still arguing over whether to announce the board's retreat when Malik's phone lit up. Unknown caller, Cambridge, MA. He glanced at Evelyn. She nodded once. He answered, "This is Malik." A woman's voice, crisp and careful. "Mr. James, this is Dr. Eliza Wainwright, interim dean at Harvard College. First, congratulations on the Ayer release. Second," he waited. He could hear beneath her composure the hum of an office that had been on fire for days. "We would like to meet," she said. "Not about your admission." A pause he could feel in his bones. "About partnership with full autonomy for your program, resources without conditions, and a commitment to implementing Aerie across our feeder schools. We would also like to discuss a named fund for community-built mathematics, named for your mother." Malik closed his eyes. The room blurred, then steadied. Rosa, at the sink, turned, sensing the shift without hearing the words. Evelyn watched his face without breathing. "What does full autonomy mean to you?" he asked, voice even. "It means," Dr. Wainwright said, "we follow your lead, and we listen where we never have." Silence stretched, charged and tender. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop. Somewhere, a bell rang for a class that had waited too long to begin. "Mr. James?" the voice prompted, softer now, as if she knew this was not a yes or a no but a moment. He looked at Rosa. She set down the dish towel as if it were a flag. He looked at Evelyn. She nodded like the answer lived in the work, not the call. He brought the phone back to his ear. "Let's talk," he said. "A beat. Tonight," the dean replied. "In person. We'll come to you." He checked the time. He checked the chalk-stained tarp folded on the chair. He checked the model glowing on the laptop screen, its colors remapping a future. Evelyn mouthed, "Different?" He nodded once. Then the apartment buzzer sounded. 3 short bursts, rehearsed and urgent. Malik startled. No one had told Harvard his address. Rosa moved to the intercom. "Who?" A voice, small through static. "Courier from Mr. James. From Cambridge." Rosa pressed the door. The stairwell filled with footsteps. A soft knock, then an envelope slid under the door. Heavy paper, a seal he recognized from too many headlines. Malik bent, picked it up, and turned it over. His name in black ink. He glanced at Evelyn. She swallowed. "Open it." He broke the seal. His eyes ran left to right, then stilled on the center. He looked up, heartbeat in his throat. "It's not a pitch," he said, voice thin with surprise. "What is it?" Rosa asked. He held up the first page. Evelyn saw the heading. And beneath it, a single line in formal serif that made the room tilt. "Effective this semester, all applicants from Aerie Red schools will receive an adjusted review protocol and guaranteed access to bridge resources, developed in partnership with the Basement Project." The buzzer sounded again, 3 short bursts, the world arriving faster than air. Malik stared at the letter, then at the door, where footsteps paused as if waiting for permission to become real. The envelope on the floor proves Harvard isn't calling to consume him. They're proposing to follow his math and his lead. The doorknob turns. The Harvard letter did not feel like victory at first. It felt like a truce written in a language too smooth to trust. Evelyn read it 3 times, Rosa twice, Malik once. Then he folded it carefully and set it aside. "Honorary admission," the dean said when they met 2 days later in a converted lecture hall filled with quiet cameras. "Not because you need our validation, but because we need yours." It was the strangest confession Malik had ever heard. The most powerful school in America was admitting it had been wrong, not in an op-ed, not in a committee note, but in front of him. They offered him a seat in the class of 2026, though he was still just 15. They offered funding, millions earmarked for the basement project. They offered a title, Founding Fellow in Community Mathematics. Rosa listened in silence. Evelyn crossed her arms. Malik tilted his head, studying the dean the way he studied equations, waiting to see if the hidden variables revealed themselves. What happens if I say no? Malik asked. The dean exhaled. Then we do it anyway. But less well. And without you. For weeks the offer hung over them like a storm that might bless or drown. The press speculated endlessly. Would he join the Ivy League that rejected him? Would he accept their crown? Ellen prepared for both answers. She drafted letters of resignation, updated her syllabi, and called colleagues she hadn't spoken to in years. Rosa cleaned more furiously than usual, as if scrubbing grout could quiet the noise of the world. Malik visited the basement room at Dunbar again, brushing his fingers across the scarred chalk tray like reading Braille. At the next basement project session, the kids asked him directly, "Are you leaving us for Harvard?" He knelt down so they wouldn't have to look up.
No. Harvard's coming to us.
The decision finally came on a rainy Thursday. They were sitting in Evelyn's kitchen, rain ticking on the glass, Rosa folding towels. Malik pushed the letter back across the table. "I don't need a seat in their classroom," he said. "I want 100 classrooms. They'll never build, with doors that don't close." Rosa's hand stopped mid-fold. Evelyn smiled through sudden tears. "So you're saying no," Evelyn said. "I'm saying different," he corrected. 2 months later, the announcement shook the city. The James Harper Institute for Community Mathematics, funded by a combination of redirected alumni pledges, foundation grants, and the very first unrestricted donation Harvard had ever made to something it didn't control. The institute opened in a repurposed textile factory, bricks old enough to remember when black families were barred from its payroll. The ground floor became a library. The second floor, classrooms. The top floor, open halls with chalkboards lining every wall. Rosa picked the curtains. Mr. Jacobs supervised construction like it was his personal theorem. Evelyn insisted the sign carry both names. When the ribbon was cut, Malik refused to hold the scissors. "This place isn't about cutting," he said. "It's about building." The first year, 100 students enrolled. Not officially, not through applications, but by showing up. Some were 12. Some were 30. Some worked night shifts. Some skipped other schools. Some carried kids of their own. All of them found the same rule written above the main board.
No permission required.
Evelyn retired that spring. At her farewell, she stood in front of colleagues she had sparred with for decades, and said simply, "The greatest proof I ever saw wasn't about numbers. It was about belonging." Then she placed her chalk down and recommended her replacement, Iana Clark, a black mathematician Malik had quietly mentored through the early chaos. The vote was close, but it passed. Evelyn left campus that day lighter than she had felt in years. Rosa never gave a speech. She simply kept showing up, bringing snacks, wiping tables, reminding Malik to eat something that wasn't a theory. But when she watched the institute's first group of students present their projects, papers, models, even a rap about parabolas, she let herself cry quietly in the back. She had taught Malik to be invisible, and somehow invisibility had built a lighthouse. The press still tried to own the story, to make it into a headline, from janitor's son to education revolutionary. Malik refused interviews more often than he gave them. "I'm not the story," he said. "The work is..." But one afternoon, after the Institute's 1-year anniversary, he did something no one expected. He walked into the main hall, the smell of chalk thick from a day of lessons. A whiteboard, old, salvaged from Evelyn's house years ago, stood at the far wall. It was the same one where she had first caught him writing equations, while Rosa mopped nearby. The room was empty except for Rosa, Evelyn, and a few stragglers. Malik uncapped a marker. He wrote slowly, carefully. "Hope your work ties time." No variables, no unknowns. Just the truth he had lived. He stepped back, capped the pen, and smiled for the first time in weeks. Then he walked away, leaving the equation behind. The kids would find it in the morning. The world would find it later. But Rosa, Evelyn, and the old whiteboard already knew. The proof was complete. On the new school's wall, Malik writes a single equation and walks away smiling. They tried to silence him, to make his pain invisible, but the truth spoke louder. Stories like this remind us how easily injustice hides in plain sight, and how powerful it is when someone dares to stand against it. If you believe every voice deserves to be heard, type yes in the comments, and subscribe if this story broke your heart.